everyone. Welcome to the Hey CTO podcast. I'm Peter Torres.
And I'm Sara Gonçalves.
And this is a space where you can get to know a little bit better the members of the CTO Portugal community. Today, our guest is Ana Martins de Carvalho. Ana, thank you so much for being on today's episode.
Thanks for having me.
No. Ana, it's a super pleasure to be talking with you. And to get to know you a little bit better and your current projects. So for anyone that is listening to us, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing lately.
Okay, so I'm Ana. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Anansi, which is an insurtech startup. Well, my experience is in software engineering, I guess, with more of a focus on the back end. I've worked mostly in finance, both in startups and larger corporations in London. And before founding Anansi, I started freelancing because I guess I wanted to experience different challenges in other domains, but also have the freedom of managing my own time remotely. And I guess lately I've been full-time on Anansi.
Okay. So, and can you tell us a bit more about Anansi? And what we have been doing lately there?
Yeah, sure. So Anansi is an insurtech startup with the goal of building automated shipping insurance products. I founded Anansi with my co-founder Megan when we were both in London because we were seeing firsthand how data was being used to power new finance tools and startups. But in insurance, which is, I guess, a comparable domain, insurance was still very much in the dark ages with lots of formal processes. You need to speak to someone, lots of back and forth, manual forms. So that was that. And then we started playing around with this idea of using data to automate the process of getting insurance or even understanding what kind of insurance is required. Because I think most of us, and I think most businesses as well, just get insurance when someone tells you you need insurance, but you don't have an understanding of what insurance you need. So I guess we've evolved a lot since that, and fast forwarding to the present, we've launched an app on the Shopify App Store, I guess, as our first proof of concept. And for who doesn't know what Shopify is an e-commerce platform where you can sell things online. Our app automates the process of getting insurance for losses or delays in parcels and also pays back the claims automatically. So this is what we call parametric insurance because there are certain triggers that we get from the data, so we can't just do everything ourselves. So we have raised a seed round just this summer. So we're now in a sort of growth phase. We're hiring across the business. We're negotiating new partnerships and we're planning new insurance products. So it's a very exciting time for us.
No, for sure. You just mentioned so obviously I think that what I think everyone heard is that you started a startup. It's been quite successful. You just did kind of, starting kind of exploring how you can integrate it with Shopify. And you just mentioned the seed round. I saw the news when they came out, and I was really happy with that. I was really impressed. What was the feeling like? Was this something, that were you imagining exactly like it was? Or, kind of, were you super excited? Were you expecting it to be so soon? So tell us a little bit about those feelings when you got that seed round.
I think the process of actually getting, everything signed and getting the seed round can be maybe a little bit, we're super happy, of course. Maybe it can be a little bit, anticlimactic, contract comes, contract goes, and everything's online. So, you're in the same space where you always are. So it's just like, okay, nothing changes immediately. So it's not like you have the feeling. But obviously, after that, the conversation changes because now you have this money to grow the business. So now you have fixed plans, what you need to do to reach your goals, and you actually have the means to start implementing it. So I think it's a gradual understanding of, okay, things changed. But I think also, well, this I guess may sound a bit odd, but when the news came out, it was a bit later than when things actually were signed.
I see.
But I think just having, you know, the news come out and everyone congratulating us and sharing, I think that's also like an important moment. Okay, now the world knows, you know,
Exactly.
now the eyes are on us and we're moving forward. So
So almost like a second celebration, right?
yes, absolutely.
And how it was in the beginning when you started that idea with your Megan, it was his name. How it was in the beginning to grow a team, and because you mentioned that insurance world can be a bit not many people knows about it. How it was to recruit people to your team? It was challenging, or
It's been challenging, I guess, especially for talking about hiring software engineers. It is a very challenging market, as we all know. I think one of the good things of having all of this, you know, insurance is probably not the most attractive space when you think about insurance. But I think people that have applied are people that really look at the innovation and the business and really understand, okay, I see this is a pain point and it sounds really exciting to solve this problem. So I'm in. So I think I see, you know, when people come into an interview, they've done their research. So they ask me, okay, so what's this pain points, or why isn't, you know, X and Y already doing this? You know, what is the actual problem? So I think on one hand, it's harder to get, you know, lots of people coming in, but I think people who do apply have have more of an understanding of the business and why they want to work with us.
No, for sure. And one thing that definitely you mentioned that I really resonates with me is right now we are seeing, you know, everywhere a huge challenge in hiring people. I think this is something that it's happening in Portugal, it's happening in the United States, it's also happening in the United Kingdom for sure. I know that, you know, your co-founder is in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. For instance, you're right now based in Portugal. So I'm assuming that you are working pretty much as a distributed or remote-friendly company. Do you see that as something that it actually kind of can play on your favor? So let's say that, you know, when people reach out to you and you're kind of, you know, assessing a candidate, do you see that there is more interest because, you know, people can actually say, oh no, look, we can work from everywhere, and you know there is a strong correlation with a healthy work-life balance? Or how do you see, or do you think that actually this remote situation and all this being distributed is not that kind of such an interesting thing after all?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question. I think, well, just a correction, first of all, Megan is currently in Germany. She is
in Germany.
She is
Wow.
British, but she currently lives in Germany.
Okay.
Yeah, we met in London, but even then we were always remote. We met just a few times,
Wow.
and we always wanted to keep that culture within the company. You know, it's working great for us. It's working really well for our team too. I think, as in terms of being an advantage or not, it's interesting. I would say maybe not so much of an advantage at this point in time, post-pandemic, where there's many more companies working remotely.
I see.
So I guess that's not so much of a selling point. I think it's still pretty good selling point for some people, but maybe not as relevant as it was before the pandemic, if that makes sense. But one interesting thing is that before the pandemic, I was we weren't hiring employees just then, but we were like trying to have like maybe 1-year contract with someone before pre-seed funding. And I remember asking my friends in Portugal, I mean, do you know someone would, like to do this. And people are more like risk averse in Portugal. So no one wants to leave their office, stable job and work remotely. People like working, going to the office, being with their friends, and just having, I guess, a regular office life. So most people weren't really attracted by working from home before.
Oh, interesting.
But I think now it's definitely different. Well, it's different. I think some people found out that they actually liked working remotely, even though they thought they wouldn't. But some people realized, no, I really prefer to be in the office. So I think there's a bigger pool of people that would be attracted by the idea, but also bigger pool of companies that offer that possibility. So I think it's still pretty much a challenge.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And talking about challenges, what would you say? What would you say that it's the biggest challenge for a remote company? And if there is one, do you have any tips that could?
Okay. Well, I think the challenge could be also, continuing maybe the previous topic about hiring people that are actually suited to work remotely, because some people really need that enforcement of being in the office and having the support of, the physical presence of a team, which is totally fine. And some people are just would like to be left alone, happy to jump on a call to solve issues, but really like to manage their own time and be more independent, which is the kind of people that we want in a startup anyway. So I think maybe there's that first challenge. I think one challenge that's maybe most commonly spoken about is keeping the team values and culture, because now you have people alone in their homes, and you still want them to feel part of your team. The way we're, I guess, addressing that is we have some processes in place, to just have some team socials. We also have team meetings where we just talk about the business. We're very transparent about everything that's happening in the business, about funding, where we are with our goals, what each department is sort of working on. So we're trying to have some process in place to make everyone feel part of the growth of the company. But complementing that, I wouldn't say that's just a remote office problem. I think the main problem when you're in the office is that companies rely too much on the physical space to make employees feel like they belong to the company. And I think when you go remote, you need to be more intentional and put more thought around how do we pass on the values to the people instead of just having them come into the same room and feel like they belong to that group.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Actually, I was reading about that maybe in a remote environment, it's a little bit more challenging to assure values and shared values and principles. But the thing is that it can definitely be done, right? We've seen interesting companies like GitLab, for instance, now that just went through an IPO. They were full remote all along, right? And they are thousands of employees. And I think that we need more of these examples, to actually kind of to show, with all due respect to the Googles of this life and Facebooks, that sure, having an awesome and fantastic office is great, but culture, values, principles, it's much more than just a physical space like you described, right? No, absolutely. And then one thing, we are talking about one thing that is super interesting, right? Kind of, remote work, deciding if a company should do that or not, values and principles, the culture, definitely lots of things that obviously it's important for everyone. But when you're running your own company, it becomes with a different importance, if you will. Did you ever imagine to to become a co-founder, entrepreneur? Was that kind of something that you planned all along, or was this something that it was completely out of the blue, completely random?
Well, I guess yes and no. I think there's a lot of talk about new startups and people building things, and well, I guess especially in London, there's a new product, a new tool coming out every week, and you're just like really excited and you want to be part of the whole thing. But you're also very curious, like how do they actually do this? How do you like put things in practice? I think looking back, it required me maybe being a little bit naive about all the hardships that came ahead. But I think I'm just naturally very curious, and I like to try new things. So I was always very interested, but I haven't actually, actively looked for a way to build something serious or start a company before I met Megan and we started working on Anansi. So I guess the bug and the willingness was there, and then only when Anansi came along, I started more actively working on that. But also always focused on this is a very interesting tech challenge that I would like to resolve, and then let's just see where this will take me.
And you mentioned that it all happened when you were in London, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen? Why London? How did you come up there?
Uh-huh. Well, I always wanted to live abroad. So when the time came to start looking for a job, I only looked for a job in UK, didn't look anywhere else. I guess picked UK because I thought that it would, for a software engineer, or I guess looking at the software engineering landscape, the London and the UK would be the place where I'll have access to the most innovation and what's cutting edge in the industry. So I thought, I'm taking this seriously. I don't want a job just to make a living. I want to be at the edge. So that's why I went there. I guess I did the full interview process from Portugal. I signed the contract while I was still here. I even rented a room while I was still here. I never went to the UK for that. And then when the time came, I just booked my one-way flight and off I went.
Wow.
What an adventure.
No, for sure. And I can totally relate to that. I've lived in London as well. And I can see completely what you're describing. Like, I believe that obviously London had a big part in also inspiring you to become an entrepreneur, because definitely the tech scene, like the city, has a very positive vibe of can-do attitude.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not a surprise that actually kind of London also had this positive influence on Anansi. That's great. And tell us one thing. So you started the company, right? So you were a software engineer, so from what I understood, like someone very comfortable with Python, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you start a company and become a CTO. What changed? Like, did you notice like any sort of difference, like right off the bat, like almost on day one, or was this something that it was kind of very natural to you and nothing really changed?
Well, it's funny because when we started Anansi, I was freelancing. Well, as well as I still had like my day job, but I started freelancing because I wanted to be remote and maybe start being a digital nomad. But basically, I was like, trying this. So in the beginning, when you're trying this new idea, you can feel a little bit like, it's a freelance project. You have to build this product, I guess, as you do for your clients. So you don't initially, don't have to worry about all of these things that we were talking before, company culture. You just want a prototype that works and shows what your vision. So I think it's more of a gradual change. So all of a sudden, we went to an accelerator. So then you have more structure. Yes, so we've done an accelerator in Switzerland, actually, in Zurich. So you start having a little bit more structure around like product. So what's your vision? What's your mission? What user cases cases you have around this product? What problem you're trying to solve, or what problems do you want to solve? Maybe you should focus on this specific problem. So it's starts slowly having more structure as the product evolves. I think it's one of those things that maybe looking back at the beginning is just like massive change, but it's definitely gradual. It's not like an overnight thing, for sure.
Yeah, but I'm curious. So, do you keep practicing your full stack development skills? So, is code still part of your CTO life, or not anymore?
Well, yes, it is. I guess, as a very small company, the resources are scarce, so you need to do whatever the company needs. I think at this point, I'm not like coding full time. There's a lot of other areas of the business that require my attention. So I'm not like actively building features or anything like that. I'm more like maintenance, bug fixing, code reviews. I guess more on maybe a team lead sort of role at the moment, while keeping, I'm also product. I'm also HR. I'm also compliance and legal, and whatever the
Playing
business
all
needs,
different
basically.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And tell one thing, and and this is super curious because it was actually one of the questions that one person did to me when I was on Web Summit. That was, so with all these responsibilities, right? Coding, reviewing code, running an organization, being HR, legal, so wearing so many hats. Do you see yourself becoming a CTO completely hands off? So is that kind of part of the ambition, and you see that as kind of a natural evolution? Do you always want to, to stay somehow hands on, or do you have a different vision of what you would like kind of, to evolve into?
Well, I think at least from what I've seen now, the natural evolution would be maybe to leave to leave the hands-on tech development and maybe position myself more on a strategic point of view. I think there's, maybe generalizing a bit, there's never the best time. Is more what does the business need from me at this point, and that's what I'm sort of trying to provide. And it's also I guess managing the needs of the business, but also your personal preferences. So I think maybe if I was a person that really wanted to stay hands-on, I would maybe hire someone to do the other parts of the business that are taking my time. But I guess what I'm doing is, okay, I'm hiring people that I trust to take more of a lead on the tech side, and I'm the one addressing the other parts of the business that maybe require my attention more, because they're more like maybe strategic for the direction of the business. So I guess it's very much as a personal experience, as you said.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned in the beginning that you are someone that likes to learn new things, always learning new challenges and so on. At this phase, how do you see yourself? Like, what kind of things do you feel that you need to learn more? What things continue to leave you curious? And what makes you continue to evolve, like throughout your career?
Well, I think it's interesting because I think maybe the entrepreneur, with all of its hardships, of course, I think it's a very good path for someone like that, that likes to learn new things, because you're forced to understand how to build something, how to have a system in production, what's the best architecture for your platform. And those are things that maybe you don't necessarily learn in the companies. if you're mostly like an engineer and that's just coding, more or less, or even if you are dealing with the architecture, you're most times presented with something that already exists. So you're not forced to actually start from scratch and see whatever is available and reason about them. So I think is it's just a big learning experience around everything related to tech. I guess at this point, how do we scale this business for millions of users in the best case? So how can we still keep this logic that we have, but with many users coming in, with multiple insurance products? So I guess how do we handle lots of data? How do we handle lots of income operations? How do we all of that tech challenges, I think, are really, really good, and you need to look at what's being done out there and what's new, and what the companies that are most innovative in this space are doing, I think. But also there's a flip side of the business. So how do you keep your business relevant? And I think that's also looking at innovations. So how do you keep we've started this, I guess, a few years ago, and the landscape is moving so fast, not just in tech, but in all of the industries, that when you think of making a change, something new come up, and the decision is now the best choice is now a different one. So it's really hard, I think, to keep up. So I think it's just trying the best we can to incorporate new innovations. For instance, we just implemented open banking, for instance, as a payment in our solution. So I guess just an example of try to keep the product relevant, not just the core business idea, like goods in transit insurance, but also the way people interact with your product needs to feel relevant as well.
For sure. No, I love that. That advice is fantastic. And maybe with the spirit of that in mind. So, imagine that, for instance, me and Sarah, we wanted to start a startup. But we don't. Okay, just to make it clear. But let's say that, we would just, bump the three of us kind of, onto each other. And we say, hey, Anna, look, you started a startup. You went on an incubator. You just got, your seed round. Who knows when the Series A will come up? Like, what would be your advice for someone that is pretty much kind of starting the journey? That is super important because, and thank God we know that Anansi was a very successful story. But for each Anansi that we have, a lot of them unfortunately fail. And so I always think that any sort of advice for someone that is actually kind of striving and winning on such a demanding world as the startups, always it's interesting to understand kind of, like one tip, one sort of guidance that you would definitely give to someone that would start a new startup today. Okay. What would that advice be?
Well, I would like to start maybe for thanking you for saying you don't want to start one, because I think some people might feel the pressure, it's like cool to start something. And I think some people might think, oh, this is the only way forward, or it's like boring to just work at a company. And that's like totally not true. It's very much personal preference. It's okay either way. So it's good to also share the stories of people that don't want to. It's fine.
Yeah.
But if you do, what I would say is be kind to yourself, because as you say, most ideas don't actually turn into successful businesses. And I think that's also something that was for me maybe hard to realize in the beginning. When you start something, you have no idea if it's going to be successful or not. And I think there were points where I was like closely associating the success of the business with my own personal success. So if something went wrong, I failed or I was a failure. And, you read all of the success stories and you think, all these people managed, I must be doing something wrong, but that's not. There's so many variables. It's mostly a luck. I think luck plays a big part in this. So I just say, be kind, enjoy the process, enjoy what you're learning in the process as well. Don't focus too much on the end goal, because that will most certainly change, especially in the beginning. And even if you start something and a few months in you think, oh my God, this isn't for me, I don't want to continue this, it's fine as well. Just explore whatever idea that you want to explore, any idea that you'd like to explore, but also keep your feet on the ground and do what's best for you in the end.
Fantastic. Love. So happy to make that question. Thank you. Very good answer.
And I like the beginning, that it's okay if you don't want to start a startup. Yeah. Sometimes people see like that it's the only way, like to feel achieved or something like that. Yeah. But you can find your achievements on other ways
different
as well.
ways, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So cool.
And tell me something. So since that beginning of Anansi, do you see something that right now you will do differently? So something that you regret, or some lesson that you learned?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's a little cliche, but I guess you've learned with all the decisions. So I can say maybe I wouldn't change anything. What I would say maybe as I think the biggest shock or the biggest learning for me is that insurance is a regulated environment. So you go into the startup world and you start building a product, and maybe you have some expectations because you've read what other companies have done, how they've launched, the products they have. But in a regulated environment, you need to go to the same pace as regulations and the partners that need to accompany you because of how the environment works. So sometimes it can be a little bit hard because you're excited to move forward, and then you just have to wait because there's no other option.
Yeah. You need to adapt to the environment you are in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, nice.
For sure. One question that I have in mind, and definitely I would love to pick your brain is, definitely there are a lot of startups there, just like we just mentioned. Some of them are very successful, some are not, some are actually kind of in a very good track, to become, God knows, the unicorns that all startups have this sort of ambition. Mm-hmm. One thing that definitely changed on recent years was to actually to see Portuguese, running a startup, being the founders of startups, and I'm thinking about Paulo Rosado from OutSystems, where startup works, Tiago Paiva from Talkdesk. We also have Nuno Sebastião from Feedzai. So it's, I think that we also always saw, that the software engineering in Portugal was great, and definitely I think it was always some sort of a secret that we actually were very capable here. But now we're actually seeing Portuguese taking the lead on an entire initiative, an entire company. And now we have someone like you, Ana, kind of taking the same sort of steps. Who knows when you're going to get to unicorn? Do you think that this sort of landscape is changing and it's making easier for Portuguese kind of to win on the sort of industry that they are trying to disrupt? So do you look to these people, and also José Neves from Farfetch, for instance? He also is based in the UK. So do you see that these first kind of founders that are now respected worldwide are opening the doors for for someone like you to also kind of to win there? Or do you just get at least inspiration from there? How do you see these kind of Portuguese that kind of took the lead and you're kind of following the exact same steps?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I think, I think the short answer is yes. Maybe speaking a little bit more generally, representation is very important in whatever field. I guess we can also in not just tech or about nationality, but in other aspects as well. So if you see people like you doing something, you feel, oh, okay, it's possible. I guess in the specific example, in terms of someone from the same country doing things, it is inspiring, especially when you start in a different country and you just see people. You relate to people, obviously, but you see, oh, okay, so there's this person is Portuguese as well, and he's doing this thing. So it's actually not as new for someone also Portuguese starting this. So it's not going to be news. It's not going to be weird, or I don't know what the right word for it is, but it definitely helps you feel more, okay, so this is normal now. And I think
Exactly.
I can say as well that being in the CTO community helps with that as well, because there's a lot of variety of companies, not just based in Portugal, but also based outside of Portugal. And there's, CTOs and managers from very well-known companies that I knew, but I guess you hear of companies and you know them as a black box. You don't know people in the company. So actually knowing, oh, okay, so this person is like, a manager for Microsoft, where this person is a CTO in this company that I actually know very well because, it's from London. So I think, oh, okay, so this is actually, it's not as disruptive as you think in the beginning, because it's just cool. So it's possible. So it's good.
No, for sure. No.
Really cool.
Very well.
Yeah. But I agree that it feels good, and I can understand that it feels good because it's not like a total unknown. You kind of you can talk with someone that already passed through that journey, and you can take some examples from that. So it's not total unknown, and you might feel a little bit more safe. But of course, with all the risks that that have in place.
I guess it's a false sense of maybe safety, but it's still useful.
Yeah.
No, and we need more examples for sure about that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's good
Sarah,
to keep inspiring to each other. Yeah.
No, for sure. Sarah, I think that we are pretty much at the end of our episode. I think that we have time for one question, right? At least one. So you want to take the lead on that one?
Yeah. I'll go with the first one. Yeah. Me and Pedro, we will always like to finish this conversation with one or two more fun questions to get to know you a bit more better. And I'm curious about something that you share with us. So it seems that you like to crochet. So I was curious to know, how did that begin? Why crochet? And do you find it relaxing by being something totally different from what you do professionally?
Yeah, no, that's actually a funny story. So I have a friend that knows crochet since she was a kid, because she had her mom and grandma teaching her. But I guess it's just not something that I had in my family. So I was like curious and also intrigued, about that. But I've never picked up until after I started Anansi and after I started traveling a bit. I felt like I needed like a hobby that I could take with me. Like a remote hobby. So I thought, okay, so
remote hobby.
That would be like a nice thing to try. And also, in our profession, we do everything that we do is digital, stays in the cloud on your computer. So I wanted to see something and touch things. So I guess that was it. One afternoon, I watched maybe 6 hours straight of crochet videos, and the rest is history.
Oh, wow. And by the way, let me ask you a question. So you've mentioned, when you were traveling, you started kind of, doing that. Did you ever had any issues going through the airport because of the needles of the crochet? So it's fine, or you actually already had like one or two troubles with that?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I did research before. I don't take the metal ones anymore. I have like a wood one, so those are fine.
Oh, wow, so super smart. So so the wood ones can go through security, it's fine, and the metal ones you just give up on.
Yeah, I thought it's better not to take them.
Yeah, no, for
It's
sure.
really an
nothing
issue.
hippie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Always playing safe.
No, for sure. So, unfortunately, our time is up. And it was fantastic. Having you here today. It was great fun talking to you. So, thank you so much for being here with us. And yes, thank you everyone for watching this episode. We hope that you definitely got insights, but also a lot of inspiration from Anna today. And we hope to see you soon on the next episode of Hey CTO. So stay tuned for more. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for having me.